A man in a long robe and turban stands on the bank of a wide, slow river in the north. Smoke rises from a ship pulled onto the shore. He does not pray. He does not look away. He takes out a reed pen and a piece of paper, and he begins to write down what he sees. He is the only reason we know any of this happened. A river, a ship pulled onto a beach, a man with a reed pen. He is a jurist from Baghdad. The year is 922. He has been traveling for almost a year to get here, through deserts and mountains, and a winter so cold his beard froze to his face. He has reached the Volga, and on the bank of the Volga he has met a people he has never seen before. They are tall and tattooed and armed. They come down the river in long boats. They worship wooden posts. They wash their faces in a single shared basin, and he thinks they are the filthiest creatures God ever made. He writes it all down anyway. His name is Ahmad ibn Fadlan. The people he is watching are the Rus, the eastern branch of the Norse, the merchant Vikings of the river roads. The Rus did not write about themselves. No saga preserves their own voice from this century. Everything we know about who they were in this exact decade, in this exact place, comes from the notebook of a man who thought they were unclean. That notebook almost did not survive. The original was lost in the Middle Ages. For 1,000 years, the West knew only fragments, copied by a later geographer who happened to like the passages. The fuller text sat on a shelf in a library in northeastern Iran, anonymous among other treatises, unread by anyone who recognized what it was. In 1923, 1,001 years after the ship burned on the bank of the Volga, a man walked into that library and opened the book. This is the story of how an entire people came down to us through the hand of a stranger who did not love them, and how that hand, in turn, was found again by another stranger 1,000 years later in a city he had not chosen to be in. It is the story of the thread carried twice. A man is bent over a long table in a room that smells of ink and old paper. His finger moves along a line of Arabic script. The light from the window is low and orange. The sun is going down over Baghdad, and he is trying to finish a paragraph before he has to call for a lamp. The brick of the wall behind him is still warm from the afternoon. From the street outside, he can hear the noise of the market by the river, and, further off, the call to the evening prayer beginning at one of the mosques. His name is Ahmad ibn Fadlan. He is a jurist. We do not know exactly how old he is. We do not know what he looks like. We know almost nothing about his life before this room. What we know is that he reads, and that he writes, and that he works for the court of the caliph. The city around him is the largest city in the world that is not in China. It has about 500,000 people in it. It has Christians and Jews and Zoroastrians and Muslims of every school. It has a hospital and an observatory. It has a library called the House of Wisdom, where Greek philosophy has been translated into Arabic and Indian numerals have been worked into something the world is about to call algebra. The city is 2 centuries old and at the peak of its written life. This is the world Ibn Fadlan was trained in, a world where to record something was to make it real, a world where a man's career was built on the precision of his prose. Hold this in mind, because in less than a year, this man will be sitting on the bank of a river he has never heard of, watching a ship burn, surrounded by people whose language he does not speak. And he will reach for the only tool he has ever fully trusted. He will reach for the pen. A man in a heavy felt coat is standing in a hall of polished stone, sweating. The hall is in the caliph's palace in Baghdad, and the man in the felt coat has been traveling for months to get here. He is a messenger from the king of a people called the Volga Bulgars, who live on a river he assumes the people in this hall have never seen. He is right. They have not. A court scribe is reading the letter out loud, slowly, in formal Arabic. The messenger does not understand most of it, but he understands his own name when it is called, and he understands the shape of the request, because the shape of the request was rehearsed with him before he left. The king of the Bulgars, whose name is Almish, is asking the caliph for 4 things. He is asking for teachers who can instruct his people in the law of Islam. He is asking for the materials to build a mosque. He is asking for the engineers and the money to build a fortress, because his people are caught between the steppe and the river and have powerful enemies. And he is asking for an alliance. Specifically, he is asking for an alliance against the Khazars, the Jewish-ruled empire to the south, to whom the Bulgars have been paying tribute for as long as anyone can remember. In the language of the court, this is a small request from a small king. In the language of the world, it is something larger. It is the formal entry of a frontier people into the written empire of the Abbasids. It is the moment a king on the edge of the known map decides that the prestige of Baghdad is worth attaching his name to. The caliph agrees. He will send a delegation. The delegation will include teachers, a representative of the law, money for the fortress, and gifts. The decision is made in a sentence, in a room. None of the men in the room have ever been to the Volga. One of them will go. Ibn Fadlan is standing in a courtyard before dawn. The air is cool, briefly, before the heat returns. He can hear the camels being loaded, the creak of leather, the soft complaint of an animal that does not want to kneel a second time, the rough breath of a driver telling it to. There is dust in the air already from the hooves. In his hand, he is holding a folded piece of paper. It is the itinerary. The date is Thursday, the 11th of Safar, 309 by the Islamic calendar. By the calendar most of the world will eventually use, it is the 21st of June, 921, the longest day of the year. The delegation is not large by imperial standards, and Ibn Fadlan is not the head of it. The formal leader is a court eunuch named Susan al-Rasi. The military commander is a Turk named Tegan. Ibn Fadlan is the secretary, which means he is the man whose name is on the documents, and he is the religious advisor, which means he is the man whose job is to make sure that what the delegation does and what the delegation reports is in keeping with the law. He is, in other words, the man with the pen. The route on the paper goes north out of Baghdad to Hamadan, then east to Rai, then further east to Nishapur, then across the Karakum Desert to Bukhara, and then further still to a place called Khwarezm, where the rivers run into the inland sea the Arabs call the Sea of the Khazars. From Khwarezm they will go north into the steppe, across grasslands no one in the delegation has crossed before, and they will keep going north until they reach a river. The paper does not say how long this will take. The paper does not have to say it. Everyone knows it will be most of a year. He folds the paper and puts it inside his robe. He climbs onto a camel. The sky behind the palace is just beginning to lighten. He does not look back at the city. He has no reason to think he will not return. Ibn Fadlan is standing on the bank of a river, and the river is solid. He has seen rivers freeze before, in stories. He has read about it. He has never put his weight on one. A man on horseback rides past him from the far bank to the near one, the hooves of the horse striking the ice with the sound of a hammer on stone. The river is the Jehun, which the world will later call the Amu Darya. It is the great river of Central Asia, and it is, at this moment, a road. He is wearing every layer of wool and fur he could find in the town. It is not enough. His beard has frozen against his face. His breath comes in white. When he tries to speak, the air goes into his lungs like a small knife. He has never felt anything like this, and he has no words in Arabic that are equal to it. He will, later, simply describe it as a cold so severe that the ground split open. The town behind him is called Jurjaniya. It is the winter capital of a region called Khwarezm, on the edge of the Great Steppe. The delegation reached it in the autumn of 921, and they have been stuck here for months because the steppe to the north is impassable in winter. They have spent the winter in borrowed houses, eating borrowed food, listening to a language they half understand, waiting for the world to thaw. For a man from Baghdad, this is the first real lesson of the journey. Not the desert, not the mountains, this, the fact that there are places on the earth where the air itself is hostile to a body. The fact that the empire of his caliph, which on paper extends in every direction, does not in practice extend to a place where a river can carry a horse. He is learning that the world is larger than the book said. He is learning to take notes. A man is sitting on a felt mat under a tent, holding a wooden bowl of fermented mare's milk that he does not want to drink, and trying not to let his face show it. The tent is made of gray felt and smells of smoke and animals. Outside the tent, the wind is constant. There are no trees on this part of the earth to break it. The grass moves the way water moves. The man is Ibn Fadlan. The people whose tent this is are the Oghuz Turks, and he is their guest, which means by their law he cannot be harmed, and he cannot refuse what is offered. The spring has come. The delegation has left Jurjaniya. They are crossing the steppe now, moving from camp to camp, and at every camp they are received with hospitality. And at every camp, Ibn Fadlan is shocked. He is shocked by the bathing. He is shocked by the marriage customs. He is shocked by the casualness with which men and women speak to one another. He is shocked, above all, by what he reads as a complete absence of the categories he was trained to think in. There is no mosque here. There is no court. There is no jurist. There is only the wind and the felt and the grass and a code of behavior he does not know. And yet, and this is the thing that is going to matter later, he writes it down anyway. Not just the parts that confirm what a jurist from Baghdad already believes. All of it, the parts that disturb him, the parts that he does not understand, the parts where the Oghuz say something that he, the trained man of the law, cannot answer. This is the habit that will save the Rus from disappearing. The habit of recording the things that offend him with the same care he gives to the things that interest him. The habit of not editing the world down to the parts that fit. He does not yet know that the Oghuz are practice. The real strangeness is still 2 months upriver. A man is standing in front of a king, and he is reading a letter out loud. The room is a hall of timber and felt, not stone. This is a frontier court, not a palace, but it is full of people, and they are silent. The man reading is Ibn Fadlan. The king is Almish, the Yiltawar of the Volga Bulgars. The letter is from the Caliph of Baghdad. It has been carried by the hand of the man reading 4,000 kilometers. The date is the 12th of Muharram, 310. The 12th of May, 922. 11 months, almost to the day, since the delegation left Baghdad. Ibn Fadlan reads carefully. He is reading in Arabic, and the king does not speak Arabic, so after each section, there is a pause for translation, and in the pause, Ibn Fadlan can feel the room. The king sits and listens. The king's counselors are along the walls. There is a smell of wood smoke and of leather. The light is coming in through high openings cut in the felt. When the reading ends, the gifts are presented. There is a saddle, there is a robe, there are scrolls of the Quran and instructions in the law. There is a banner. There is no money for the fortress. This is a problem, and the king knows it immediately. The fortress was the reason. The fortress was what would let the Bulgars stand against the Khazars, who hold the lower Volga and tax everything that moves on it. The teachers and the banner are gestures. The fortress was substance. The delegation has not brought the substance. The king listens to the explanations, and the king is polite because the king understands the protocol, but something has gone out of the room and it will not come back. The mission, as a mission, has failed. And yet, for Ibn Fadlan, the journey has barely begun, because the fortress is not why we remember any of this. He is in this video because of what comes down to the river to trade. A man is stepping out of a long boat onto wet sand. He is taller than any man Ibn Fadlan has ever stood next to. His hair is the color of wet straw. From the tips of his fingers to the base of his neck, the skin of his arms and his chest is covered in dark green lines, trees, figures, knotwork that runs into more knotwork. He is wearing a cloak that covers half of his body and leaves one arm free, the arm that holds the axe. There is a sword at his hip with a broad blade and a deep groove running down it. There is a knife as well. He is not alone. Behind him, more men are coming out of more boats. They are unloading bundles of fur, sacks of something, and two women in chains. Ibn Fadlan, standing back from the water, has begun to write. These are the Rus. They have come down the Volga from the north, the way they always come, the way they have been coming for almost 100 years now, since boats from Scandinavia first found the river roads through the forests and the lakes that connect the Baltic to the Caspian, to the silver of Baghdad. They are Norse. They are, in the language of the world that will come after, Vikings, but not the Vikings of the West. These are the eastern branch. These are the merchants. They are here because the Volga is the road and Bulgar is the market. They have brought furs of marten and sable and fox, taken from the forests further north. They have brought wax and honey and amber. They have brought in chains men and women captured from the Slavic peoples between the Baltic and the Black Sea. They are here to exchange these things for one thing in particular. They are here for the silver coin of the caliph, the dirham. They want it by the sack. The first thing Ibn Fadlan writes about them is their bodies. He writes that he has never seen more perfect physiques. He writes that they are tall as date palms. Then he writes about the women with their iron and silver and gold brooches, one for each 1,000 dirhams the husband owns. Then he writes about the dirt. A man is walking up the bank of the river with food in his hands. He has bread and meat and onions and milk and a small jar of fermented drink. He has just unloaded his boat. He has not yet found a buyer. He is walking towards a tall wooden post that stands at the edge of the trading ground. The post has a face carved into it, a human face, roughly cut, weathered. Around the base of the tall post are smaller posts, also with faces, arranged in a kind of family. The man sets down the bread and the meat and the onions in front of the tall post. He pours out a little of the drink. Then he steps back and he prostrates himself and he speaks. He is not speaking in any language Ibn Fadlan understands, but Ibn Fadlan has learned through interpreters what the man is saying, because every Rus merchant says some version of it. The man is saying, I have come from far away. I have with me so many slaves and so many sable furs. I want you to send me a merchant with many dinars and dirhams, who will buy from me at my price and not bargain with me. This is theology. It does not look like theology to Ibn Fadlan, because there is no book and no scholar and no system he recognizes. But it is theology. It is a complete and coherent transaction with the unseen. If the sale does not come, the merchant returns the next day with more food and goes to the smaller posts, the family of the tall one, and asks them to intercede. Ibn Fadlan writes this down with care. He also writes in a different passage that the Rus are the filthiest of God's creatures, that a whole household will share one basin of water in the morning to wash their faces, the eldest first, and that by the time the basin reaches the youngest, the water is something he cannot bring himself to describe. He writes both things, the theology and the basin, the dignity and the disgust. He does not separate them. He does not soften either one. This is what is going to matter in 1,000 years. A man has died. He is one of the great men of the Rus camp, a chief, a wealthy merchant, the kind of man whose death is going to be answered with a fire. His body has been placed in a temporary grave with a roof of wood over it near the river. He will lie there for 10 days. 10 days is how long it takes. For 10 days, the women of the camp will sit and cut and sew the clothes the dead man will wear when he goes. The cloth is rich. Some of it has come from Byzantium, carried up the rivers and through the forests for years before it reached this bank. The thread runs and the needles work and the clothes take shape. And outside the tent, the camp goes about its life around the grave. For 10 days his wealth is being divided. 1/3 goes to his family. 1/3 buys the clothes that are being sewn. 1/3 buys the fermented drink that the men of the camp will pour and pour and pour through these 10 days and the day that ends them. And on the first day, after the body was placed in its temporary grave, the angel of death, the older woman whose role this is, who the Rus call by a name Ibn Fadlan, translates as the angel of death, went around the camp and asked the question that has to be asked. Who will go with him? A young woman said she would. She is a slave. She is young. Ibn Fadlan does not record her name. He records that she said yes, and he records that in the law of the Rus camp, having said yes, she cannot now say no. He records that for the 10 days she is attended by 2 other women who go where she goes, who hand her food and drink, who wash her, who sing with her. He watches her across the 10 days. He does not look away. She drinks. She sings. She is given things. The 2 attendants are always with her. The camp around her is preparing the ship and the wood and the animals. She is, in a sense, the Rus understand, and that Ibn Fadlan tries to record, already on her way. The 10th day is coming. Pause for a moment. A jurist from Baghdad has traveled for almost a year, across mountains and deserts and a frozen river to reach the court of a small king on the upper Volga. The mission he was sent to perform has failed. The money for the fortress never arrived. The alliance against the Khazars will not happen. But none of that is why he is in this video. He is in this video because while the mission was failing, he was watching. He was watching the steppe Turks under their felt. He was watching the merchants come down the river in their long boats. He was watching the wooden posts and the prayers in front of them. He was watching the basin of water passed from hand to hand. He was watching a young woman who would not be named drinking through 10 days. And now, on the bank of the river, he is about to watch something he will spend the rest of his life trying to put into Arabic. Something that no other literate observer of his century will see. Something that, if he does not write it down, will leave no trace of itself in any text anywhere in the world. Watch the man on the bank. Watch what he chooses to look at and what he chooses to write. 1,000 years are about to depend on him. The 10th day has come. Ibn Fadlan walks down to the water in the morning. The ship has been pulled out of the river and set on a wooden cradle of birch and poplar logs, 4 supports holding it upright on the sand. There is a tent built on the deck of the ship, made of cloth. There are cushions inside the tent of Byzantine brocade. The body of the dead man is lifted out of the temporary grave. The skin has darkened in the cold ground, but has not given way. He is dressed in the new clothes the women have sewn: trousers, leggings, boots, a tunic, a caftan with gold buttons, a hat of sable. He is carried up onto the ship and set against the cushions in the tent. Bread and meat and onions are placed beside him. Drink is placed beside him. The weapons he carried in life are laid along his body. Then the animals are brought. A dog is taken first, then 2 horses, run until they sweat, then taken apart and laid on the ship, then 2 cows, then a rooster and a hen. Ibn Fadlan watches all of this from the bank. He is not a participant. He is the witness. He is doing what he was trained to do, which is to record what is in front of him. The young woman is brought forward. She has been drinking through the day. The 2 attendants are still with her. She is given more drink. She is lifted 3 times up onto a frame built like a doorway above the side of the ship, and from this frame she looks out and speaks. The first time she says she sees her father and her mother. The second time she says she sees all of her dead relatives sitting together. The third time she says she sees her master in a place that is green and beautiful, and he is calling her, and she wants to be sent to him. The old woman the Rus call the Angel of Death takes her into the tent. What happens inside the tent is not the part of this story that needs to be told here. What needs to be told is that when it is over, the closest male relative of the dead man, naked, walks backwards toward the ship with a lit torch held behind him and sets fire to the wood beneath the cradle. The men of the camp stand around the ship and beat on their shields with sticks, so that no sound from inside the fire reaches anyone outside it. A sudden wind comes up off the river, and the flames climb fast. Ibn Fadlan writes this down. The wind, he notes it specifically. By evening, there is nothing left of the ship but a low pile of ash on the sand. The Rus build a small mound over it and set a post upright at the top of the mound. They carve the name of the dead man into the post. They do not carve the name of the young woman. Then they go back to the river. There are still goods to sell. A man is sitting at a low writing table by lamplight. The room is small. The walls are plastered. The window is shuttered against the night. He is back in Baghdad. He has been back for some months. The journey took 14 in the end. He has reported to the court. The mission, formally, is over. He is writing the Risala. He works from notes. He works from memory. He has the journey laid out in his head, and he is going through it in order, day by day, town by town, river by river. The reed pen scratches on the paper. The lamp burns low and is refilled. He writes about the cold of Khwarezm. He writes about the Oghuz under their felt. He writes about Almish in the timber hall and the missing money for the fortress. And he writes about the Rus. He writes about their bodies and their tattoos and their axes. He writes about the women and their brooches. He writes about the post by the river and the prayer to the post. He writes about the 10 days. He writes about the ship and the wind and the post they raised over the ash. He writes the parts that disgusted him. He writes the parts that impressed him. He writes the parts he did not understand. He does not edit the world down to the parts that fit. He does not know. He cannot know. that the empire he reports to is closer to its end than to its beginning. He does not know that within a generation the caliphs will be effective prisoners of their own guards. He does not know that the city around him will be sacked by a steppe army from the east 3 centuries after he sets down his pen, and that most of the books in it will burn. He does not know that his report will outlive the report's reason. The fortress will not be built. The alliance will fail. Al-Muqtadir will be killed by his own troops in a few years. None of that will matter in 1,000 years. What will matter is what is happening right now in this small room by this lamp. A man is writing down what he saw. A man is sitting in a library in a city in the east 300 years later, and he is copying a passage out of a book. The book is the Risala of Ibn Fadlan, or a copy of it. The man is Yaqut al-Hamawi. He is a geographer. He is compiling a dictionary of the world. He is doing this in a hurry because a Mongol army is moving west across the steppe, and the libraries he is working in are not going to survive. Yaqut copies the parts he wants. He copies the Rus. He copies the Khazars. He copies the Bulgars. He copies the description of Khwarezm. He does not copy everything. He copies what fits the entries in his dictionary. The rest of the Risala, the parts he does not copy, go on existing in whatever exemplars still exist in libraries that the Mongols have not yet reached. Then the Mongols reach them. In 1258, the city of Baghdad falls to the army of Hulagu Khan. The libraries are burned. The Tigris, it is said, runs black with the ink of the books. What survives after this of the work of Ibn Fadlan is what Yaqut copied. The Ruse passage in pieces, the funeral in pieces, the wind on the ship in pieces. For 700 years, this is what the world has of the Risala. Excerpts, quotations, a name in a footnote. The Rus themselves, meanwhile, have changed past recognition. In the years after Ibn Fadlan, their merchant settlements upriver consolidate into a state, with a capital first at Novgorod, then at Kiev. In 988, the ruler of that state, Vladimir, descendant of the riverboats, is baptized into Byzantine Christianity and his people with him. The wooden posts come down. The angel of death is forgotten. The Rus of the Durham and the brocade tent become the Rus of the icon and the onion dome. The people Ibn Fadlan watched at the river in 922 are now ancestors. They are not a living culture. They are a layer underneath a living culture. The notebook is the only window left, and the notebook is in pieces. A book is sitting on a high shelf in a library in northeastern Iran. The shelf is wood. The library is part of the shrine of the Imam Reza in the city of Mashhad. The book is bound with other treatises, mostly geographical, in Arabic, and the binding is plain. Light comes through latticed windows and moves across the floor and the wall behind the shelf, slowly over the course of a day, and then more slowly over the course of a year, and then more slowly still over the course of centuries. For most of those centuries, no one opens the book. The original Risala, the one Ibn Fadlan composed in Baghdad around 923, is gone. We do not know exactly when. It was probably one of the books that disappeared in the catastrophes of the Mongol 13th century, but the loss is silent. There is no record of someone watching it burn. It simply stops being mentioned in the inventories. What survives is what Yaqut copied around 1220, and what survives in this volume in Mashhad, a copy made sometime in the 13th century, which is the fullest text of the Risala that the world will ever have. About 420 pages. The journey from Baghdad, the cold of Khwarezm, the Oghuz, Almish, the Rus by the river, the post and the prayer, the 10 days, the ship on the bank. The text breaks off mid-sentence in the description of the Khazars. It is incomplete, but it is far more complete than anything else, and it sits on the shelf in Mashhad, unrecognized. It is not hidden. It is not locked away. It is cataloged. Scholars use this library. They walk past this shelf. They take down other volumes. They study them. The catalog, when it is eventually written, gives this volume a number. Astane Quds Razavi, manuscript 5229. But no one who handles it has the training to recognize what it is. The men who could read Arabic do not happen to be the men who care about the Vikings of the Volga. The men who care about the Vikings of the Volga mostly do not read Arabic and have no reason to be in Mashhad. The shelf and the reader do not meet. In Europe, in 1823, a German Orientalist named Christian Martin Frahn publishes the fragments that Yakut had preserved. This is the first time the modern West has the Rus passage at all. It causes a sensation. Historians of the Vikings begin to cite Ibn Fadlan. But what they are citing is the fragment, not the book. Nobody in Europe knows there is a fuller version. Nobody in Mashhad knows that anybody in Europe is looking. Decades go by, a whole century goes by. The light keeps moving across the floor. The book stays on the shelf, the wind on the ship, the post by the river, the young woman who was not named. All of it is in the book. None of it is being read. The forgetting is not a destruction. The forgetting is a room with the right book in it, and no one to open the cover. A man is sitting at a wooden table in the library of the shrine in Mashhad. He is in his early 30s. He is wearing a coat against the cold of the room. The light from the latticed window is falling across the table, across his hands, across the pages of the volume open in front of him. His name is Ahmed Zeki Validi. He is a Bashkir from the Volga-Ural region. He is a historian of the Turkic peoples of the Volga, which is to say, in part, of the descendants of the Bulgars Ibn Fadlan visited 1,000 years ago. He has not chosen to be in Mashhad. He led a short-lived movement for Bashkir autonomy after the Russian Revolution, and the movement was crushed. He fought on with the Basmachi resistance in Central Asia, and that was crushed too. In 1923, with the Soviet state closing in, he crossed into Afghanistan, then into Iran, and made his way to Mashhad because the shrine library here was famous, and because he had books to write and nowhere else to write them. He has been pulling down volume after volume for days. Geographical treatises, notes on the Turkic peoples. He opens a 13th century codex of bound geographical writings. He reads the contents. He turns the pages. He reads the first lines of one of the texts inside. He stops. He goes back. He reads the lines again. He reads the next paragraph. What he is looking at is the journey of an Abbasid embassy from Baghdad to the Volga in 921 to 922, written in the voice of the embassy's secretary. The cold of Khwarezm, the Oghuz, the court of Almish, and then, in detail, no other source preserves, the description of a people called the Rus, their bodies, their tattoos, their prayers before wooden posts, the 10 days, the ship on the bank. He has the Risala in his hands, not the fragments, the book. He sits with it a long time. He turns the pages slowly. He finds where the text breaks off in the description of the Khazars. He notes the call number, Astane-e-Quds, manuscript 5229. Between the day the ship burned on the bank of the Volga and the day this man opened the cover of this book 1,001 years have passed. The notebook of a stranger who did not love the Rus has been found again by a stranger who did not choose to be in Iran. The thread picked up. The Rus had no book of their own. They had no scribe of their own. They had runic inscriptions, short ones, on stone and on wood, but no narrative literature, no chronicle, no history. They were not silent people. They sang. They told stories. They made deals in 3 languages on a riverbank 1,000 miles from home. They simply did not write any of it down in a form that could outlast them. Everything we know about who they were in 922, what they wore, how they prayed, what they sold, what they did with their dead, comes from outside. And it comes in detail from one man, a jurist from Baghdad who was sent north on an embassy that failed, who watched them across a few weeks at a trading station on the Volga, and who wrote down what he saw with the precision of someone trained never to leave a paragraph unfinished. He was not a friend of the Rus. He called them the filthiest of God's creatures. He found their religion strange and their habits worse, and he wrote it all down in detail, with care. This is what the channel keeps coming back to. The thread of a civilization is rarely carried by the people who loved it. It is carried by whoever was holding a pen at the right moment and who chose to write. A Rus merchant, watching Ibn Fadlan watch him, would have laughed at the man with the reed pen. We know this because Ibn Fadlan himself recorded the laughter. He records a Rus saying, in effect, "You Arabs are fools. You bury your dead in the ground and let the worms eat them slowly. We burn ours, and they enter paradise in an instant." The 2 cosmologies look at each other across the bank of the river, and each one finds the other unclean. 1,000 years later, only one of those cosmologies left a written voice. It happens not to have been the one with the Durhams and the longboats. It happens to have been the one with the pen. And there is a second silence, smaller and harder. The young woman who walked into the tent on the deck of the ship was given more space in the Risala than almost any other figure in it. Her words from the doorway are recorded. Her attendants are recorded. Her drinking and her singing are recorded. The shape of her death is described indirectly around the edge of itself. Everything about her was preserved except her name. Ibn Fadlan did not ask or did not write it. We have, from the Volga of 922, the name of the chief who died. We do not have hers. The notebook is what we have, and the notebook has the gap inside it. We carry the gap forward, here, deliberately, not to fix it, to name it. In the last video, we stood at the base of a cliff in western Iran, where a man named Henry Rawlinson hung from a rope and copied an inscription in a dead language that nobody could read. He carried the thread of the Persian Empire forward by reaching back across 2,500 years of silence and breaking it. This video is the same operation in reverse. Not a dead language recovered, a living people described in present tense by a stranger who happened to be in the room. Not a man on a cliff, a man on a riverbank. 2 different shapes of the same work. The thread is not always pulled forward by the heirs of a civilization. Often it is pulled forward by whoever happened to be passing through and who chose to look. The Rus of the Volga reach us through the hand of a man who did not love them and through the hand of a man, 1,000 years later, who did not choose to be in the city where he found them. It was almost nothing. It was enough. A man is climbing a mountain in Peru. The year is 1911. He is American. He is looking for a lost city. that the local people have been farming the edges of for generations, and that the outside world has not seen since the Spanish came. He will find it. The world will hear about it because he writes a book. And then, almost a century later, in a library in Copenhagen, another book will be opened. A book written by an indigenous nobleman of the conquered Andes, who, around the year 1615, sat down with paper and ink and 1,200 pages and tried to record the entire memory of his people before it was lost, and whose manuscript then sat unread in the wrong city for 300 years. Another civilization, another stranger who arrived, another outsider who wrote it down, another notebook that was almost lost, the thread carried twice again. Subscribe to the long thread. The next civilization is being prepared. Every empire ends. The thread does not.